Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving into a pair of sources that, at first glance, seem worlds apart.
Definitely. Quite different on the surface.
Yeah. On one hand, we have this really gripping news story, a mysterious disappearance, a tragic death, an unexpected arrest, all swirling in this, well, bizarre social media storm.
Hmm.
And on the other hand, a deep academic dive into the hidden world of online promoted illicit businesses, meticulously analyzed, with complex data.
Right. Almost the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of how the information is presented.
Exactly. So our mission in this deep dive is to see how these seemingly disparate narratives, a sensational crime, a rigorous academic study, how they actually intersect.
Which they do in some surprising ways.
We'll explore how information travels, how public perception forms, and really what happens when the digital world clashes head-on with real-world crime, often with surprising and unintended consequences for all of us.
Yeah, what's fascinating here, I think, is how both sources really illuminate the changing landscape of information in our society. Well, whether it's through, viral memes or these detailed data trails left by illicit activities online, they both force us to rethink how we understand crime, public discourse, and even the concept of place in the internet age.
Okay.
We'll try and connect the dots, not just to understand what happened, but maybe why it matters in the bigger picture of how crime, place, and networks are evolving.
Yeah, let's start then with that first story. It's a truly shocking one from India that recently made headlines. The case of Raja and Sonam Raghuvanshi.
Hmm.
They were an indoor couple on their honeymoon in Meghalaya up in the northeast. Raja's body was tragically recovered from a gorge near Cherrapunji on June 2nd. They were last seen together way back on May 23rd.
A long time. A terrible end to what should have been a happy trip.
Absolutely. But then there's this dramatic twist in the narrative.
Hmm.
Sonam Raghuvanshi, the wife, was later found near a roadside eatery, a dhaba, on the Varanasi-Ghazipur highway, far away.
Okay.
And then the bombshell dropped. Police confirmed her arrest. They alleged she actually orchestrated her husband's murder, hired contract killers.
Wow.
Reports also confirmed the arrest of 3 men in connection with the crime as well.
It's important, though, to add some context here, some complexity. After she was located and got initial treatment, Sonam was placed at the Saki One-Stop Center.
Right.
And for anyone listening who doesn't know, this is a shelter specifically for women who are victims of violence. So that detail coming amidst these serious accusations, it just adds another significant layer, doesn't it?
It really does. And it gets even more complex because you have a direct counter-narrative from Sonam's father, Devi Singh.
Mm-hmm. What's he saying?
He emphatically claims his daughter is innocent. He says the police are trying to frame her. He's even gone as far as calling for a CBI inquiry, that's India's Central Investigative Agency.
A big step.
Huge. And he's even accusing the Meghalaya chief minister and the police themselves of lying and being involved in Raja's murder. He also made a point of stating that Sonam and Raja didn't know each other before their arranged marriage.
So multiple conflicting narratives swirling around already. Very messy.
Extremely. Now, here's where it gets, well, truly bizarre, and connects to that online world we mentioned. As news of Sonam's arrest broke, the internet, specifically social media platform X, it was quick to resurrect this old viral meme.
A meme in relation to this.
Yeah. Sonam Gupta Bawafa Hai. It translates to Sonam Gupta is unfaithful. This meme was massive years ago, apparently. Even topped Google's trending searches back then.
I vaguely remember something about that on Currency Notes.
That's the one. And now it's resurfaced. Users are humorously and maybe, darkly linking the old meme to this current real-life case involving Sonam Raghuvanshi.
Oh, boy.
You see tweets like, Sonam Bawafa Hai, Pelehi Pavishivani Witi, meaning Sonam's unfaithful. This prophecy was made earlier.
Wow.
Another user quipped, name changed, Sonam Raghuvanshi Bawafa Hai. And a third added, Sonam Bawafa Kasat Katzil Bin Nikli. Sonam turned out to be a murderer along with being unfaithful.
That's insane.
It really is. It's this unsettling fusion of a very serious criminal case with internet humor, an old online prophecy. It just amplifies the bizarre nature of how information, or maybe misinformation, travels now.
And this phenomenon, it isn't just dark humor or some, interesting cultural footnote. It's actually a stark illustration of the potentially irreversible damage this kind of online collective consciousness can inflict
On a real person's life, yeah.
on their reputation, regardless of the actual facts or the legal outcome. It really highlights how quickly an internet-forged truth, quote unquote, can eclipse actual legal processes. It fundamentally challenges our justice system in this digital age. It just underscores the profound difficulty of controlling information once it goes viral, especially in such an emotionally charged context like a murder case.
So a really vivid example of how digital narratives can clash with real-world tragedy and shape public perception almost instantly.
Okay.
Now, let's shift gears. Let's turn our attention to another, maybe less visible, but powerful aspect of the digital world's impact on offline realities.
Right.
How online platforms are shaping the very geography and dynamics of illicit businesses. What kind of digital breadcrumbs do they leave? And what can those breadcrumbs tell us about the hidden mechanics of crime in the internet age?
This is where that second source comes in.
Exactly. This brings us to our second source, a comprehensive academic dissertation. It unpacks the complex world of online promoted illicit massage businesses. We can call them IMBs for short.
Okay, IMBs.
Think of them as these hidden operations, often fronts for more serious issues like human trafficking, that really leverage the internet to find clients and locations.
In this research, it's guided by some core theories from criminology. They act like different lenses to view the problem.
Like what?
Well, first, there's social disorganization theory. Basically, imagine a neighborhood that's in flux, maybe lots of people moving in and out, a real mix of different cultures, different incomes, or areas where community ties just aren't that strong. This theory suggests these zones in transition, as they're often called, historically struggle to prevent crime because those informal social controls, people looking out for each other, they weaken.
Makes sense.
And building on that idea of community structure, the researchers then looked at crime opportunity theories. This includes things like routine activity theory and crime pattern theory.
Right.
These focus more on how specific environmental features can actually signal low risk for criminals, but offer high rewards and, acceptable effort for illegal activity. So, crime, in this view, happens when you get a motivated offender, a suitable target, and no capable guardians all converging in the same time and space.
And the internet plays a role here.
Crucially, yes. The internet itself can act as a virtual convergence space. It brings offenders and targets, or clients in this case, together, bypassing traditional physical barriers.
Interesting.
And finally, to understand how these activities might spread between places, they used social network analysis.
So how does that work here?
Think of it like mapping out connections. But instead of friendships, we're mapping how criminal activities, or in this case, the clients of these IMBs, create ties by moving between different locations, different neighborhoods.
Wow. Right.
It shows how crime isn't just isolated incidents, but often spreads through these sometimes surprising connections. Connections formed and strengthened even through online interactions, bridging physical distances.
And the study's methodology sounds pretty solid for connecting online and offline.
Yeah, quite robust. It analyzed publicly accessible data, online reviews, basically from over 2,300 IMBs. This was between 2011 and 2017.
It's a lot of data points.
It is. And they then meticulously matched this online data with detailed offline neighborhood information, things like socioeconomic characteristics, land use patterns, existing crime stats, across 104 cities in the U.S.
Wow. That's a massive undertaking, trying to map a problem that usually stays hidden.
Absolutely. And the findings on where these IMBs actually locate offered some, compelling insights.
What did they find? Did it match the old theories?
Some of it did, yes. It confirmed some traditional ideas. IMBs were indeed more likely in areas with higher population density, more residential instability, people moving in and out, frequently more population heterogeneity, so diverse mix of people, and higher income inequality.
Okay, so those zones in transition features we talked about.
Exactly. Features often associated with those areas where social ties might be weaker.
But I sense a but coming.
But yeah, there was a surprising contradiction. The study found that IMBs were actually less likely in areas of concentrated disadvantage, so the poorest areas.
Really? Where were they then?
Instead, the study found them attracted to more affluent areas.
Huh. That seems counterintuitive based on some older criminology, maybe.
It does contradict some prior work, yeah. But it aligns perfectly with the idea that these particular IMBs attract higher income clientele. people who have the disposable income for these illicit services. So it suggests they're following the money, not necessarily locating in the most impoverished areas.
Okay, that makes a certain kind of economic sense, I guess. So what does this all mean for how we think about crime and maybe more importantly, policing these kinds of activities?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting.
This is the part that stood out to me. The study uncovered this perplexing police paradox. Get this. It found that having a police station located within a mile of a census tract,
Right, a small geographic area.
yeah, typically home to maybe 2,500 to 8,000 people, having a police station nearby actually increased the odds of that tract having IMBs by a factor of 1.252.
Which basically means about a 25% increase in likelihood.
Exactly, a 25% increase. Completely the opposite of what you'd expect from police presence being a deterrent.
Absolutely counterintuitive.
And this effect was apparently even more pronounced in smaller cities. So what's going on there?
Well, the study suggests this paradox hints at how online domains subtly change the whole geography of these crimes. IMBs can blend into seemingly legitimate settings like busy retail areas or office parks, pretty much. They benefit from a shared pool of clientele who are already there for other reasons. And crucially, because of the online platforms, the online review boards, clients can easily warn each other about police activity in real time.
Ah, okay.
This makes these illicit markets incredibly adaptive and locationally flexible. They can pop up, disappear, move, and those primary roads nearby. They also play a role. Easier access for clients, potential easier getaways if needed.
So it's almost like they're using the visible markers of order, like a police station or a busy street, as a kind of cover, while the real coordination happens online.
That seems to be the implication. The online network provides the resilience.
Okay, let's talk more about those networks then. You mentioned social network analysis earlier.
Yeah.
How did this study explore the connections between these IMBs?
Right. So the study specifically looked at how clientele use these online review boards not just to find places, but to create these inter-neighborhood ties by traveling between IMBs in different areas.
So mapping client movement.
Exactly. And they focused particularly on what they called strong ties. This means multiple clients were observed traveling between the same specific pair of census tracts, suggesting a more established pattern of movement, not just random visits.
Okay, and what did they find out about these client networks? Where were the connections strongest?
This was another fascinating finding. While spatial distance, how far apart places were, remained a key barrier, people generally don't travel super far.
Makes sense.
Polities were actually more likely to form between socioeconomically distinct areas.
Wait, distinct, not similar.
Yes, distinct. This goes against that common idea of birds of a feather flock together, right? You might expect people to stick to areas similar to their own.
Definitely.
But here, the data suggested connections were stronger between, say, an affluent area and a less affluent one. It suggests a possible diffusion of these deviant norms, or at least the activity itself, between advantaged and disadvantaged neighborhoods.
That is surprising. It really challenges assumptions about who connects with whom in these illicit markets.
It certainly does. It points to a more complex social geography than we might assume.
So given all this, the paradoxical locations near police, the adaptive online networks, the surprising cross-neighborhood ties the study then move to a crucial question. How effective is police enforcement against these IMBs?
Exactly. They use machine learning techniques, which are pretty sophisticated, to try and predict where new IMBs might pop up, and then critically to assess the real impact of police enforcement actions, like raids or shutdowns.
And the results?
Well, this is where they found a really concerning backfire effect.
Backfire, meaning enforcement made things worse.
Essentially, yes. The study found that police enforcement actions, things like raids or arrests targeting an IMB, actually increased the monthly cumulative number of new IMB locations opening up in the targeted census tract itself.
In the same area they just raided.
In the very same area. By a statistically significant margin, too. The beta coefficient was 0.916, which, for anyone interested in the stats, is a clear indicator. It suggests almost a one-for-one increase for every unit of enforcement. You saw nearly one new IMB location pop up nearby that month.
That's incredible and counterproductive.
Deeply counterproductive. And a smaller increase in new locations was also observed in the adjacent buffer zones, the areas immediately surrounding the targeted tract.
So squeezing the balloon in one place just makes it pop up right next door, or even in the same spot again.
That seems to be the pattern suggested by this data. The study proposes a few reasons for this adverse impact, or what they call a weak intervention backfire.
Like what? Why would enforcement backfire?
Well, one possibility is a disconnect between current police actions and core principles of deterrence theory. For example, maybe police aren't using strategies like rotated and repeated crackdowns, which some theories suggest are more effective than one-off raids. Also, that online promotion aspect is key. It gives IMBs incredible locational flexibility. They have a continuous pool of supply, meaning workers, and demand, meaning clients, facilitated online, so they can just rebound incredibly quickly after an enforcement action. The network adapts.
Right, the online infrastructure remains.
Exactly. Furthermore, the study critiques traditional vice tactics like sting operations, suggesting they might be particularly ineffective against human trafficking if that's involved.
Why specifically for trafficking?
Because victims in those situations often don't self-identify to police. There's immense fear, deep distrust of authorities, or sometimes even complex emotional attachments, trauma bonds, to their exploiters. So a simple raid might not actually help the most vulnerable people involved.
That backfire effect is just really hard to wrap your head around. Is it possible there's another way to interpret that data? Maybe. Or are we genuinely seeing a fundamental breakdown in how traditional policing works against these digitally enabled crime networks?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It forces us to ask, are we dealing with a completely new kind of criminal enterprise here, fundamentally different because of the internet? Or are these just elements of traditional organized crime, maybe vice or exploitation, that are simply adapting much faster than our enforcement methods can keep up?
Which leads to the really important question. What does this tell us about how we should approach these complex crime problems in the digital age? If the old ways might be backfiring, what's the alternative?
That's precisely where the study leads. It really emphasizes the call for alternative responses, moving beyond just traditional criminal justice approaches like arrests and shutdowns.
What kind of alternatives?
Well, it includes things like strengthening local informal social control mechanisms, basically empowering communities themselves to build stronger social ties, to have more eyes on the street, to foster environments less conducive to illicit activity.
Community-based approaches.
Exactly. It also suggests targeting the clientele networks more directly, perhaps disrupting the demand side. And critically, raising awareness among law enforcement, service providers, the public, about the very different experiences victims might have within IMBs. It's not always a clear-cut situation.
So moving away from a sole focus on shutdowns.
Yes. The study strongly suggests that the current approach, focused heavily on shutdowns, might even be harming victim identification efforts. If victims fear enforcement, they won't come forward. It's a profound and, frankly, unsettling point.
Wow. Okay. This deep dive has truly given us a lot to think about today.
It really has.
From that bizarre intersection of a real-life murder case with a viral internet meme really showing how quickly public perception can be shaped, maybe distorted, online, to the surprising hidden geographies of these illicit businesses locating in affluent areas near police stations. And then these really counterintuitive findings about police interventions sometimes backfiring.
It really underscores how rapidly the world of crime and the world of information itself is changing. Knowledge, especially the kind we've unpacked today from both the news and the academic study, isn't just about what happened.
Right.
It's about the how and the why. How do these networks operate? Why do certain interventions fail? And critically, what might we need to do differently moving forward? It forces us to reconsider the very nature of deterrence, community safety, and control in the digital age.
Yeah, our traditional understandings of place, community, crime, control, they're all being profoundly challenged by the digital realm, aren't they?
Absolutely.
And this isn't just about complex data or abstract theories. It's about real people, real crimes, real victims, and the often unexpected ways our online interactions, our digital lives, can shape our offline realities.
Well said.
So here's a final thought for you, our listener, to mull over. What does this deep dive truly suggest about how the online and offline worlds are merging? Not just for our daily lives, shopping or socializing, but in these unexpected, sometimes hidden, sometimes dark ways. How is this merger challenging our traditional notions of crime, community, and control? And maybe ask yourself, how prepared are we really as a society for a world where the street corner can be a server somewhere, and a person's reputation can be defined by a meme?